Brett Dolan, play-by-play for RSN, for Touchdown Radio, Perfect Game, working on MLB Network as well, and joining us Thursdays on Halftime when we play Where in the World is Brett Dolan? I'll take a guess. I think you're in Fayetteville. Brett, are you?
I am leaving tomorrow for the West Coast, so it's that time of the year where we've got overlapping seasons and all that, but looking to hit the road tomorrow.
Gino's usually pretty good at picking games. What made him pick Penn State and UCLA? I guess he thought the Bruins would be halfway decent.
Yeah, no, you probably. I mean, we try to go to the West Coast for some of our affiliates once a year or so. And we try and get some top teams. I mean, we've got Ohio State and Penn State on the schedule. Unfortunately, when we have those games, they're playing UCLA. And my goodness, it has been quite a fall for the Bruins and drama as well. So I don't know what we're going to get on Saturday. I don't know if it'll be a terribly competitive game, but hopefully we get something. We'll see.
Hey, while you're there, would you mind just counting individually how many UCLA fans are there? Because there are going to be more Penn State fans. And I'm sure you can count that high, even though maybe into the 500s is not all that high.
No, there will definitely be more Penn State fans. It's an early start, 12:30 local time. I think they're calling it a blue out, which works perfectly for the Penn State fans who show up because it's a different shade of blue. But, no, I have no doubt that there's going to be a large contingent of Penn State fans there and probably overwhelming UCLA.
A blue out. I love it. That's hilarious.
Hey, I'm a James Franklin fan, Brett, and he just keeps letting me down a little bit. I was looking at Penn State's schedule for the rest of the year. They got Ohio State and Indiana, two teams that are ranked. Let's say Penn State loses to Ohio State but beats Indiana. Is their schedule good enough? I know they're in the Big Ten, but if you're looking at that with being 10-2, and I've said if you're in the Big Ten or the SEC and you go 10-2, you're going to be in the playoff 12. That they haven't beat anybody. If their best wins Indiana, is that enough to get Penn State into the playoff?
Yeah, I know exactly what you're saying. I would guess yes, but I think that the issue with Penn State has been the same thing. I think what has benefited them is they've started from such a high position, and they've taken care of business with the teams they're supposed to win. That even when they lose to a good team, they don't fall much per se, but I think it's a valid concern. A lot of their conversation this week, and listen, James Franklin is a little bit of a carnival barker, and he answers the questions, and it's an odd press conference every week. They're just leaning into what Ohio State did last year. You know, we can have a couple of losses, and we play well in December, we get a chance, and that's kind of their goal right now. But you're right. If they're 10-2, it may not be the most impressive resume, but I think it would still be probably enough to be in.
What did you make from what you watched last Saturday in Oxford, 24-19 Ole Miss over LSU? There's a couple things I wonder here. One, Garrett Nussmeier isn't right, and that has a little to do with LSU's performance offensively, maybe a lot to do with it. But I also think Ole Miss's defense is halfway good, and I know Arkansas, had their way with them at times. What did you make from what you watched on Saturday at the Vaught?
Yeah, I think you're accurate. I think LSU and Nussmeier, there's clearly issues. Not being able to run the football and then losing their top running back going into last week did not help, but they should be better than that offensively, and they're not. And that has to be a concern. I think Ole Miss probably is a little better defensively than what we've thought, and that's always been a pretty entertaining back-and-forth matchup. It looked more like a Big Ten game as far as defense than it did a high-scoring 50-40 SEC shootout. But, I think one of the underlying themes, and it's not a sexy one this year, Phil, and I think Steve Sarkisian brought it up this week when he was talking to media, it's the people that came into this year with a lot of acclaim that have not played well, and that's Klubnik, and that might be Arch, and that might be Nussmeier, and trying to figure out why, it takes a while. I know if you can't run the ball and your line's not good and this and that and whatever, you don't play as well as you hoped, but we're at that point of the year where you want to see good talent start to rise to the top, even through some challenges, and I don't know if we've seen that with some of these guys like Nussmeier and others, but LSU's going to have a hard time outscoring people this year.
But Ole Miss is a legitimate contender. I mean, I thought that watching them against Arkansas offensively, I do think they have a better defense than they even showed in that game. This is a legitimate national contender right now.
They're a legitimate contender, and I think as we talk about defense, and it's a theme, and it will be this week for my game, it was in your game last week, can you tackle? Can you tackle? Because if you can't tackle, your defense isn't going to be good. And whether it's, eliminating yards after contact, whether it's making plays in space, whether it's avoiding the play that goes for 60 that should be 10, they tackle. And I give them credit for that because it's amazing. Even if you don't have true firepower, if you can do the basics defensively, you got a pretty good shot. And I do think they have talent, and I do think they take care of some of the basics, which gives them a tremendous opportunity to win a lot of games.
Brett, we had a phone caller who has some type of formula, like an analytic formula that has Vanderbilt as the best team in the country right now. Vanderbilt at Alabama. Any way you see Vanderbilt beating I think it'd be the first time they've won there since like 86. If you're Bama, are you worried about this matchup?
I'd be a little bit worried, maybe less than I was a week ago, but sometimes I think as fans we say, well, Team X lost to Team Y last year, and they're really going to be motivated this year. And then we figure out sometimes the reason why you lost last year is you don't match up well with personnel or scheme or style, and maybe that same situation plays itself out again. I think if you're Alabama, the one thing, we saw this a little bit last week, is their quarterback is playing at an incredible level. And you take away that first game, Ty Simpson is making all the plays and all the throws. So I think that gives them a chance to also be a factor going down the stretch despite that loss to Florida State. But I don't rule Vanderbilt out. I haven't spent a lot of time watching them, but I do think they're just spunky enough maybe to win 8 games, and you don't want to be one of those 8 if you're going up against them.
So what have you made of the last few days for Arkansas football? You're around, and as you're getting ready for all these other games, you're paying close attention to the Razorbacks too, and it's just so different. There's an audition process for the interim head coach, who was a head coach of the team all these years back, and a whole pool of candidates that a lot of people have their minds made up about that pool of candidates even before their seasons are done, and you're going to kind of have to base those candidates sometimes how this season goes too, right? So it's just fascinating, Brett.
It is fascinating for people in sports who shouldn't be surprised at anything, who are still amazed and surprised at the reality that develops in front of us. And I think a lot of us are with this situation. The one thing about a coaching change, it used to be, will a coach work for what you want to pay, and does he like your recruiting base? And now it is, are you going to give him enough money, NIL-wise, to make it worth him jumping jobs, changing jobs? And that's really hard to handicap. I will say this as we go forward. We have to stop with the Dan Mullen conversation. We have to eliminate that name. Find somebody who was in that building the last couple of years at Florida. Ask him if you think Dan Mullen would be a good candidate. Hold the phone 3 feet away from your ear, and you can stop this in 20 seconds, because that'll be the answer you get. Now, who I think might be a candidate or what it's going to look like, I don't know, Phil, and I think that's why it makes it fascinating, not just for us, but for the people that cover college football around the country.
Miami Hurricanes, this is their last test, it looks like, until the ACC championship game. They good enough to win it all this year?
I think they're good enough to be right there, Matt. There's something when I watch them that maybe is missing, and I think we saw that a little bit in that Florida game where they just weren't able to put Florida away, and I know that's a pretty good defense. I think they've got a little Big Ten in them, too. I think they can run out the clock and kind of wear on you and lean on you over 60 minutes. This is interesting because, to me, they're a better team than Florida State. That rivalry is unique, and obviously they're on the road. If they win this game, I don't see them leaving the top 4 or 5 the rest of the year because of who they play and what's on their schedule. Florida State has an extra day or two after getting back from that rough game in Charlottesville. I don't know if this is going to have – I think it's going to look a lot like the game I had last week with LSU and Ole Miss. I think it's going to be kind of a mid-20s-ish type game. But, if Miami wins, I don't see them giving up their spot in that top 4, that bye territory for the rest of the season.
Okay, with all the football that we're talking about, have you had your eyes on any of the wild card games in the last 2 days?
I've tried, but my goodness, Phil, as much as we love baseball, there's 4 games going around the clock, and I'm watching. I should get paid extra for watching the UCLA games I've been watching this week to try and get up to speed on them. How about Mason Miller throwing a ball 104.5 miles an hour the other day for the Padres?
Gosh, yeah, no kidding. The thing that I wondered about is the only series that was done after 2 games, which is the Dodgers-Reds. Did you see last night, Buster Olney and Jesse Rogers are basically guaranteeing that the Reds were tipping their pitches, and the Dodgers knew exactly if it was off-speed or fastball. And I'm just thinking about, like, on October 1st, you're tipping pitches? What's going on here?
That's fascinating. I know the Dodgers have every resource available to pick up tells or signs or whatever, but my goodness, you finally get into the postseason and then you have that going on for 2 games at Dodger Stadium. That would be problematic if I was in the Cincinnati Reds front office.
You don't always win your first bet. That's why MyBookie has you covered. Use our code HOGS, H-O-G-S, and your first bet up to $500 is fully covered. If your pick doesn't hit, you get it right back with our Bet Back bonus. Go to mybookie.ag and use the code HOGS to claim your Bet Back bonus. MyBookie's where bettors win together, because bragging's good, but cashing in is better. And your first bet is fully covered. Use our code HOGS.
Must opt in during the bet to use the Bet Back bonus.